When I started trading over 9 years ago, I was bouncing between strategies and I couldn't find one that worked for me. Now fast forward to today and I'm having days like this and this. I even had my biggest trading day this year where I was able to make over $45,000. And at the end of this video, I'm gonna show you back-tested results so you could see how much you could be making right now. Okay, so the first thing that I'm gonna look for when I've got both of my charts pulled up here, and don't worry, later on in this video, I'll show you exactly how to set this up. Well, I'm gonna try to identify whether or not the market is balanced. So that is gonna mean that our two moving averages, okay, these two moving averages right here, our yellow and our blue, I want to make sure they are apart, okay, and that there is distance between them and that they are not either touching like they did here or crossing. So when they come together and when they touch and when they cross, at that point we know the market is going to make a vertical move, and the rest of the time they're going to be trading apart from each other like this. And during that time, we know by default the market is going to trade around a mean price. And so this bottom chart that I've got pulled up, this is my envelope system. Now our mean price is going to be the blue line in the middle. That is our 8-day EMA. So what we know is by default, if the market is balanced, we can expect throughout that day's session that we are going to see our price trade around this blue 8-day EMA. Now it might come off a little bit, it might come down to our red band or our green band, but by default, what we know and what is predictable is that it will always come back to blue. Now, there will be periods of time when the market does move to vertical, when our moving averages come together, that we will at that point then know we can't expect price to come back to that blue 8-day EMA. Okay, the center of our envelope system. So for example, if we look at yesterday's trading session, this was yesterday, and this was yesterday on Microsoft, we could see how during pre-market, they started to flatten out, they came together, they touched, and they crossed to the downside, and we saw this very large vertical move. And at that point, we reverted off of our mean, or our blue 8-day EMA, down to, well, outside of, entirely, of our envelope system. We actually moved outside of blue. And that low there was right on our blue band at 475.20. So what we can do is, knowing that, obviously, once the market moves to vertical, that is only going to be 15% of the time. The other 85% of the time, the market's going to be balanced and trading around a mean. Well, we could trade vertical moves, or we could trade moves back into or out of our mean. And so the envelope system essentially works like this. Now we can switch it from a bar chart to a candlestick chart. Okay, these are just candles. I'm just using bars. Same goes for our top chart. We could switch it from a bar chart to a candlestick chart. So with the envelope system, typically we will move from blues to blues, or we would move from another color to another color. This is a pattern that plays out. Whilst as long as we're balanced, we will move and trade into and around our mean. So the three things I'm going to look at when we're trading the envelope system is, well, one, let's make sure we're balanced. And if we're not, we know that we will essentially have to throw this whole thing out, right? But as long as they're not together, well, we're good to trade the envelope system. And at that point, we know this is going to be our mean price in the middle, and we know that our blues are going to be the further outmost band. So when you think of it like this, no, it's not overbought, oversold, but you could think of the blue band being as high as it's going to go and the bottom blue band being as low as it's going to go. So essentially, we'll just blow up this chart here. If we just look at the envelope system, we can see that our low of day was on our blue band, our high of day was on our outermost blue band, and we moved from that low blue to that high blue. So I like to think the envelope system as a way to know where we are positioned and how much more we have to go, and if that could be the end of a move or the end of a trend, because what we could see here is that we formed that high of day on our upper blue band, and our next high, well, we only got to our green band. So this was a lower price, so a lower candle formed on a lower band. Now here you go again, another lower candle, so lower price formed on, at this time, red, so that is a lower band. So we went from blues to greens to reds. So you could assume once this candle came up, and the fact that this candle was formed on and slightly below our green band, we would not be forming a high of day. That was it. The move was over. And you can also see how when we came off of blues, we came back down to reds. Well, we only came down to reds. We didn't come back down into greens or yellows or purples. And so again, if we're looking at positioning and we want to know how much higher do we have to go, is this the top or is this the bottom? This is a great way to do that because it's really hard to time a top and time a bottom. And it's also hard to understand when a trend or a direction might be fading out. So we're able to do all of those things with this envelope system. And a lot of the time we move from one color to the upside to the next color to the downside. So let's look at a bunch more examples here. Now, I know this might seem a little bit complex, so don't worry. I actually trade live every single morning over inside my mentorship, and I've got the envelope system pulled up, we've got our balance to vertical chart pulled up, and I use a couple other tools to actually execute and take trades. So I'm trading live in front of my mentorship group. I'll send you my entries, I'll send you my exits, so you'll essentially be able to learn the system and follow along and copy myself as you do learn. If you're interested, I'll put a link in the description below to my mentorship group. So here's an example on CSCO. The first thing we're going to do is look at our moving averages. Okay, they were apart, right? They were not together. What do we know then? Well, we know that we're going to move back to our mean. And so after CSCO did pull back, well, at that point we could watch and see, hey, we're coming into yellows, we're now coming into purples, and then look at that. We hit blues. Okay, so we'll blow this up here. You can see that low of day was blues. We weren't going to go any lower. So as long as the market's balanced and our moving averages are not together, we know that blue is going to be the lowest we can go on the bottom, right, to the downside, and to the upside, our top blue band is going to be the highest we can go. So then we moved from that bottom blue back into our mean, back into our 8-day EMA because we were balanced, and then we broke above our 8-day EMA and pushed up to purple. Okay. Now, there's an interesting situation because we went from blues to purples. We didn't make it to blues. What does that tell you? If we zoom out here and look at the trend, blues to purples, well, now the next thing we want to do is actually identify, hey, are we forming higher bars on higher bands, or are we forming lower bars on lower bands? So maybe CSCO is not the most clear example of that, but what you could really see on CSCO is that low, okay, and how that was a defined low at blues. So that's low of day. You could have taken a long position off the bottom and traded back into the 8-day EMA. So you would have bought calls here and you would have sold them here. And that still would have been a nice move. Let's calculate it, of about 1% on the chart. And if you're trading options, that could be a 25 to 30% trade. Here's another one on TMUS. We went from purples down to purples. Now, if we were to say, hey, let's short off of purple, we could short down to our blue. Now, once we make it to our next purple, we could also say, hey, let's go long back up to blue. Or we could have just hold shorts from purple through our blue down to our purple. You can see how price is always going to, though, return back to our blue throughout the day. So we're never going to get, as long as the market's balanced, we're never going to get stuck in a trade, right? Because it's not going to keep going away and keep moving away from us. It's going to come back. Now, when we come together and the market moves to vertical, for example, here on BLK, well, we can see that we actually moved off of blues when we went vertical, and we never came back to blues, not until here. So we traded for a little over 2.5 hours, and we did not revert to our mean. We did not revert to our 8-day EMA. So that was our 15%. That was the point in time where if we were short, we were going to get stuck and we were not going to recover that trade. So we want to avoid at least knowing that when we're vertical, we're not going to come into our mean. We want to avoid taking positions that would end up running away from us and we'd never be able to get them back, right? Okay, even today on SBUX, we're balanced. We formed a high. Look at that. We didn't quite make it to blues. And then throughout the day, we've been trending down below our 8-day EMA. 8-day EMA has been acting as, I would say, a resistance level. And we've continued to trade into it throughout the entire day. Boom, boom. And then look at that. We're almost back at the 8-day EMA. Even here on CVS, balanced today, off the open, moved up to blues. High of day at blues, came back down to our 8-day EMA, sold off, Low of day was yellow. Okay, we didn't get to blues, so we knew that was true low of day. Came back into our 8-day EMA, our mean, and pushed back up to upper blues. Okay, and then this next highest bar was actually on a lower band, so that looks like a true high. We're not going any higher there. Okay, we just lost steam. Now we're going to see a pullback to our blue 8-day EMA. Now keep in mind, this envelope system and trading a balanced or vertical market, this is often combined with another trading strategy. Again, we can understand the context as to where we are trading that specific stock, how much higher we could go, how much lower we could go, and we can then understand where our mean price is and where price will move back into. So if you're trying to short off the top or trade along back to the top, like, you now have an understanding on where you could position yourself, or where generally we will be positioned as in the overall context of the trend. And so let's look at a back test so you can see exactly how trading just the envelope system has been performing. So here's the back test over 120 trades. Starting the 31st of March, you could see right here, did dip slightly into the red and then saw a nice recovery, came back down a little bit, nice push. April into May, we saw that high there where this $10,000 account was sitting up about $9,000. So that's peak P&L of about 90% returns on this strategy, and you can see the distribution here. So again, obviously, depending on how much you trade with and how aggressive or conservative you be, these results are going to vary. But keep in mind, what we're trying to look at is an equity curve that moves from the bottom left to the top right to obviously see at the end of the day that we would have been profitable overall trading. Now, if you guys want the exact layout that I have, I've put a link in the description to the Thinkorswim setup. Now, all you have to do is click on that link. It's going to open up this page. It's going to say the daily traders envelopes. Then to open, you're going to click on the plus here because you're going to want to open this manually. You're going to copy this link. You're going to open Thinkorswim. You're going to go to setup, open shared item, and you're going to paste that link in and you'll have my setup. Now, again, if you're interested in trading live with me every single morning, watching me put this system into practice and having access to follow along and copy my trades, I'll put a link in the description below to my mentorship. Subscribe for more and I'll see you in the next one. Later.